You're obviously pretty disappointed Sunday after the game. How do you feel past couple of days the team's responded to that?
Well, it's conference play. You can have some ups and downs. You evaluate the film, learn, try to grow from it, and move forward. And that's what we did yesterday.
What did you see of Houston, and what did Temple do to play so well against them?
I actually personally haven't had a chance to go watch it yet. I know the staff has. I'll start diving really hard into Houston tonight and tomorrow, and we'll have our normal kind of 2-day prep for them.
Everyone knows they have a good defense. They call it the monster, the post trap. I know that's a big part of it. I know it gets kind of technical, but what do you see that they do defensively more than just kind of their effort and discipline that allows them to be so successful?
Well, they're in good position. Very rarely do you find them out of position, at least the position they're supposed to be in. And then they're really aggressive from the position they're in. So, obviously they're really good on the ball. You mentioned the post double. Everybody understands the backboards when you play them. But if they're in a gap, they're not just there. They make plays there. They're really aggressive getting after the ball with their hands and deflections. If they're in like a tag scheme where they're supposed to protect the rim and you throw it, they try to make a play on that roll pass, or they'll come behind and block it. So it's not just their positioning, which is elite, but they're really active, and they really swarm to the ball and they really get their hands on balls.
Being a conference opponent, you're obviously scouting and preparing for them, but do you ever, when you're with the team, say like, not only do we want to try and beat this, but this is some of these things we need to maybe try and focus on or do better at? I know it's different systems, but do you ever do that at all when you're going against a team like that?
I don't necessarily think we talk about it like that to our players in the middle of the season, but I've said this publicly. My level of respect for Kelvin Sampson and the job they've done there, it couldn't be greater. And I say that, and their opponent, and we want to beat them, right? But my level of respect for what he's done and then how they do it is really high because, I really value, and we really value the way you defend. We really value the way you rebound, and we really value the edge that you play with. And they do those things at the highest level. So, when I can take a step back, I really respect that.
How important is this week to prepare for a team like Houston, especially after a game like Sunday versus Memphis? How important is this week heading into the later slate of the conference season for you guys?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think as a coach, you're in November and you sit up here and you hear how important is this week, and then you hear you're in December, how important is this week and how important is this game, and in January, how they're all important. It never changes, and I understand the question from where you guys are sitting, but from my perspective, it never changes. What's important is today. We got to go out and practice and get better and improve. We have an opportunity without a game this week to practice a little bit more. And so what we'll try to do is get back to the fundamentals. We'll try to get back to some of the details that maybe you're not able to get to as consistently when you're preparing for games and playing games. But how it relates to what happened last week or what's going on next week, it's important because it's right in front of us today, and that's how we'll always approach it.
How do you replicate Jarris Walker in practice, or any other guys for that matter? They're so talented.
The same way you try to replicate. Replicate's probably not the word we use, but what you try to do when you're preparing for another team is you try to create situations that help you build the habits that you need, or the emphasis that you need to prepare for what you're going to guard. You're not going to replicate players on other teams because, like we got a bunch of guys on our team that are themselves, and they're going to go out and practice and be themselves. But let's say Jarris Walker is, really good, driving it from 17 feet. I'm hypothetically speaking here. It's not about replicating Jarris Walker. It's about getting good at guarding somebody from the 17-foot mark and the way that he drives and the emphasis. Maybe he drives right or something like that. That's the way you try to prepare. It's not, you're not, when you're preparing for a guy that's thought of as a top 10 pick in the next draft, you're not going to have a body out there that resembles that on your scout team. but you can kind of create some of the scenarios in which he's being effective, in which he's scoring.
I know you're always, narrowly focused on the game ahead, but do you start looking at Q1 games, Q2 games net? Do you do that at any point in the season?
No, I think you do it when you're scheduling, and you do it in the post or the off season, preseason. You kind of look and go, okay, do we have enough out there to be in position for postseason play? But I think when you're in it, it's just a waste of brain power. I mean, I really do. I go back to 4 or 5 years ago now. I think it was the 2017-18 year, and we're in February at a much lower level, and people are calling us, we're in the bubble and all that kind of stuff, and we had 2 quad 1 opportunities on the road back-to-back, and if we won them, maybe we're going to get in. If we lose them, there's no chance, and we lost both of them. And you think you have no chance, and then 2 weeks later they're saying we're in the tournament again. I mean, it's like you know what you got to do. You leave that up to people that are covering college basketball, and you leave that up to fans, and because that's exciting. Not people following the NCAA tournament and the bubble and the quad games and the net. And I do think that is one of those things that's exciting for fans. I think in our shoes, you just show up and you get better every day. And at the end, if you've done that, you give yourself the best chance. So, my experience, when you start thinking like that, it takes away from what you're trying to do.
How amazing is it to hold teams to 53 points in big Division I basketball with a shot clock?
Yeah, they holding people to 53 points per game. Is that what Houston's doing that?
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I think they're Ken Pom, last time I looked, the #1 defense efficiency in the country. That's more amazing to me than their points per game because it takes into account possessions. I think points per game, it could be misleading because somebody that's holding a team to 53 points per game but plays a really, really slow style of play might not be as good as somebody holding to 60 that's playing a faster style of play. So I always look at kind of how you're doing on a possession-to-possession basis. And so more than 53, which is impressive, they have the #1 defensive efficiency in the country. The last time I checked, maybe it's changed. And that's pretty impressive, and that's been consistent to their identity, at least in the time that I've been in this league.
Aside from like Q1, Q2, whatever, when it's a big game, players know when it's a big game. Sunday was, Saturday was. What has this team's approach been in those big games, and what do you guys need to do to kind of get over the hump and get some wins in those situations?
Yeah, I think our whole team is disappointed, that there's been some opportunities in this building, and we haven't played as well as we would have liked. Whole program's disappointed. I think if you try to look for correlations and that every game's different. Opponents are different. In some of the games that we've lost in conference play, the reasons that we've lost them have been very different. So I think trying to make sense of it is a little bit of a mistake. I think we have to continue to be us. We have to be Cincinnati. When we've done that, when we've really defended collectively, we've been quick to the ball, whether it's coming off the board or bouncing on the ground. When we've really gotten the right position on offense and made the simple, easy pass and taken good shots and crushed the offensive board, that's been good regardless of who we're playing. When we get away from those things, we're not as good. That's the only thing that I'd say. Certainly, every game in league, there's 18 of them. They're all equal. Some opponents may have bigger names or come in with a bigger record or higher ranking, but they're all equal and they all matter. And so we want to win all of them, but you look at some of the games that we've lost, and it's not like we're losing the same way or for the same reasons. It's certainly something we've kicked around a lot as a staff, and I do think we got a group that really wants to win and then is frustrated when we do lose. And certainly there was some frustration amongst the whole program Sunday, but you got to move on. It's conference play. You got to get on to the next one.
Landers normally produces for you pretty consistent, just about every game you're going to get about the same. There just seems to be times where you don't see him, and then next thing you know, you look at the box and he's got his 12, 14, 15 and his rebounds. Can he be better? I mean, I guess everybody can be better, but
I see him. I mean, of course he can be better. And I say that out of my respect for him as a player. He's not even nearly scratching the surface of who he's capable of being as a basketball player, and he's been pretty damn good. And that's how much I think of him as a player and how much growth I still think he has left in there. But I've heard that question now a number of times. Like, you forget about him, or maybe, I think sometimes people are evaluating the game solely on scoring. And boy, he can do that. I think he's our leading scorer if you look down right now. But he's usually impacting the game in lots of ways. He's impacting it recently on the backboards. He's improved as a defensive player. He's one of our best passers and one of our best creators. So maybe sometimes he goes through a stretch for multiple reasons that he doesn't score as much as he does in other stretches. But I don't ever feel like he's just floating around the basketball court. So sometimes that question perplexes me a little bit.
Josh played a little more minutes Sunday. Obviously, there was some foul trouble in the first half, but is there something that you saw either with that matchup or just maybe his style of play that you felt like he was a good fit for Memphis or that situation?
No, in the Memphis game Sunday, I was disappointed with Dan's first rotation. 2 turnovers in like 3 possessions. A missed defensive assignment on his first defensive possession that results in a basket that wasn't really in action. And then, on his second turnover, he doesn't make an effort to sprint back. So it wasn't like one mistake. It was like mistake, 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 mistake. And then the effort mistake, even though Dan doesn't intend it that way, it's just, the effort mistake is the one that is hard to swallow. And then we're in foul trouble. So Dan's first rotation was tough. And then we're in foul trouble, it feels like, at every position on the perimeter. I think, Shuey had 2. He ends up with 3, but at the time we're making those decisions. He's got 2, ends up with 3. Dave ends up with a second one late in the half. Ches has 2 early. So, that gave us the ability to give Josh some extended minutes. And his first couple possessions weren't real good either now. He gives up a layup on a back cut, one of his first possessions, but I thought he was pretty sound and made good plays. You want him to secure the ball a little bit better on the board. He had a couple of them go right through his hands. But I have a lot of confidence in Josh and Dan. I think everybody knows that. They're in the rotation. They play every night. Their ability is undisputed. I have an expectation at this point in the year that they both take steps to not play like freshmen anymore and to be really consistent in the areas that we value like sophomores, and I think they're both capable of that. Yeah.
what are you seeing in the league now? Houston, you beat USF soundly. They only lose to Houston by 6. They turn around to beat UCF. Saw Tulane lost to Tulsa. Temple's been Temple. Houston's still good, but it looks like, they're showing signs of being human. The league is looking tighter than it was maybe a month ago.
Yeah, I think we have a great basketball league. I think we have great players. I think we have great coaches. I've been saying that since my first experiences coaching in this league. Like, I've been incredibly impressed. I think the league is undervalued nationally, and that's got to change. So it doesn't surprise me to see parity and see people beating each other. I don't necessarily think any differently a month ago. There's going to be, like I said, there's going to be ups and downs in this league all year. You need to be a resilient team. You got to be able to learn and grow and keep getting better, and you better be able to bounce back because every night you're going to be up against a really good team and a really good coach.
I heard you this morning talking about the coaches versus cancer. That's this week, right?
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned how it affected you and then your academic advisor and all that.
Yeah, Randon Roberson, our academic advisor, has been battling cancer since the day I got here and is doing great now. But he was in and out of treatment, in and out of the hospital at times last year. And so, cancer is one of those things that all of us, it's like I don't know anybody that doesn't have a story about somebody in their life dealing with it. So it affects all of us, and it's been neat in college basketball since the time I got in. It's something that, the college basketball, specifically the coaching community, has all been able to rally around. And as you live longer and longer, it makes sense why everybody can rally around. It's this terrible, terrible disease, and it affects everyone in some form or fashion. And there's an example right there just in our basketball program, somebody that works with our kids every single day. So we'll be doing the suits and sneakers thing like we do every year. There's a Set the Screen campaign that's begun to kind of raise some awareness to cancer screening, and really proud of. We're partnering with the CEO. I think it's like 100 coaches and 100 CEOs are partnering. Lon Kruger is the one that kind of called me and got me involved in this, and he had me involved in a Coaches versus Cancer golf tournament out in Vegas last spring. So he's been really active as a retired coach, as he was when he was coaching with the American Cancer Society and Coaches versus Cancer. But he got me involved in the Set the Screen campaign. So we partnered with Riley Decker and Tide Riley and Kyle Decker, and to kind of get together with them, raise some money, and have some awareness. So anyway, there's a lot of positive things going on around college basketball this time of year with Coaches versus Cancer, and we're proud to kind of do our part here. Thanks, guys.